Oh, I've pressed the wrong button, of course I have. There we go. Hello, welcome back to... It was going so well, we were on time, everything was going right, and then I pressed the wrong bloody button, didn't I? Hello, it's time for a match preview show as Villa take on Juventus in the Champions League on Wednesday night. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics Aston Villa correspondent, Jacob Tanswell, to preview said game. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything that Luke have to offer, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off, which I'm sure will be really, really helpful with Christmas coming up. Jacob, how are you? You've been to Bodymore today. You've seen Pau Torres' press conference. You've seen Unai Emery's press conference. How was the mood at Bodymore?
Do you know what? It's very, very busy. So for the people that haven't been to Bodymore before, usually you can park in the car park next to the entrance. Really, it's an academy car park, but also media can go in there as well. So usually some spare, area to park. Yeah, there are so many Italian journalists, cameramen that I had to park all the way down into the gravel overflow car park. About a long walk, to be fair. And it was probably the only time I've ever done that. So it shows that the Italian journalists travel in their numbers. It was very busy. Pau Torres, it's actually one of the better speakers at Villa I've got. He's a very nice guy. I've interviewed him. I spent some time one-on-one in his company. He's very, very nice. He can speak Italian. Didn't know that.
Nice.
I was trying to think, why on earth would he speak Italian? But there we go. And obviously Unai Emery can also speak Italian as well, because both of them were having questions posed by Italian journalists, and they were answering in English. I was absolutely in awe of them. But yeah, the mood's good. I think Villa see this as a different competition, a good chance to get back to doing quite well in the competition. I know they lost to Bruges, but they're still very well placed in the table. So I think it's a game that they should be looking forward to, and I actually think they're favourites for.
The shame of Pau Torres and Unai Emery being able to speak Italian, and I'm half Italian with Italian family, and I cannot speak a word.
Really?
That is shameful. You said why? Did you uncover why that they can speak Italian? Because neither of them have played or managed there, to my knowledge.
No, it's a talk of the press room, trying to find some connection. While I was thinking, is Pau Torres' wife? Is she Italian? Is there another is there another element to it? I was thinking, as Emery's never been to Italy to coach, how does he know? But it's just, I don't know if I can't learn a second language, unfortunately. I want to learn Spanish, and I'm going to try to. But is it a case of once you know one language, the others just pick up as well? I don't know, but
it's not been the case for me. I can do a bit of German and a bit of French, but that's
really
only from school, like vague things that I can remember from school. I'll forever j'ai 12 ans. I'll be 12 forever in French.
But it was really impressive, and we didn't quite get to the bottom of it. So if anyone watching or listening knows the answer to why Pau and Unai speaking Italian, please let me know.
I mean, what we do know from our investigative skills that we've carried out over the last few preview shows covering the Champions League on this channel is that maybe Pau Torres won't be playing tomorrow, because anyone who does the press conference doesn't seem to start that game, do they?
No, poor Matty Cash. I think he's done a couple of them, and the same questions keep being posed about how excited he is to play in the Champions League. And
Onana as well.
Onana as well, and he's yet to play, and Onana didn't come on, did he? So normally it is a case of whoever is in the part of media will play. Juventus, Cambiasso came today. He's been their captain in recent weeks, and he'll play. But with Villa and Emery, they like to keep you guessing.
Yeah, I mean, there was some team news from him, though. Do you just want to run through the team news? Sorry, for those that haven't seen it and might not know.
Yeah, so Ezri Konsa and Boubacar Kamara are back, and Jacob Ramsey and Onana remain unavailable. I think, we reported on Athletic about 2 weeks ago that Kamara and Ramsey both suffered hamstring injuries. It was the feeling then that Kamara was a grade 1 injury, so it wasn't quite as it wasn't too bad. With Ramsey, the extent of it was unknown at the time, so I hope he's not too far away. But it's frustrating, but it's good that Konsa, who, I think, and I've said it since I started covering Villa, I think he's the best centre back Villa have got, one of the best centre backs in the league, and you'd love him to stay in that position for most of the season. So it's good that he's fit. He keeps getting these little niggles, so that sometimes he's back, without missing the game, but it does seem to be like a little niggle that's only 5 or 6 days out, but it'll be back. So it'd be just nice for him to go on a run of form without injury.
I mean, Villa's back four has pretty much changed every week. I'd wager it probably has changed every week as the season's gone on. I expect it to change again tomorrow night. Are we thinking a I don't want to say back to basics because it isn't back to basics, but we're thinking like Cash, Conser, Torres, and Luca Dean. Bearing in mind he didn't play on Saturday.
Yeah, I think so. I think that will probably be the lineup. But there is an argument to say Villa's best defensive record under Unai Emery came with Conte and Mings. Do you bring Mings back in? I know he had that bizarre incident in Bruges, but you haven't seen him next to Conte yet. So do you have that in? I think Matty Cash. I think he has to start right back. I thought Diego Carlos had a really poor game, didn't he, on Saturday? And I know he gets himself up for these games, doesn't he? And I was saying to John Townley of Birmingham Live, and today I was thinking, any Saturday 3:00 game, don't play Diego Carlos. If we want to play him in a big European night at 7:45, 8:00, and that's when you probably see the best of him.
Yeah, to be honest, a lot didn't meet the standard on Saturday against Crystal Palace, and I'm trying to try and forget that game and kind of focus on this as a one-off individual cup tie, which is what it is. But Villa are still well placed in the group, still in the top 8. A win tomorrow night would be huge in pushing that and trying to cement a place in the top 8. And Emery alluded to that, didn't he, today?
Yeah, he did. He basically said that a win would make significant, huge strides to getting in the top 8. But at the same time, he says that a point wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either, just to strengthen their place in qualifying, in a top 24. When Thiago Motta was told of Emery saying, he wouldn't mind a point, Emery called him a bluffer 3 times in his answer. So there was a bit of a humour there. But I think a win would be big. And I know Juventus are going through, and we'll come on to it, are going through a transitional phase, and they've got a lot of young upcoming talent. But if I look at that team on paper and then I look at Villa's, I still would back Villa most times at their best. So it's important that Villa really focus on themselves tomorrow and get back to the high levels they have been.
Villa 2 for 2 in the Champions League at home, 2 clean sheets as well. I can't help but think it's beneficial that we've already played one of those premium Champions League ties against Bayern Munich at Villa Park. And we've also played Italian opposition at Villa Park already. Of course, Juventus' manager managed Bologna last season as well. So you do feel that actually this is a nice game for Villa. I think it's the right kind of game at this point, and it's nicely set up for us.
Do you know what? I think I'd be probably more uncomfortable playing Celtic now than Juventus, because I think it's just the cachet of Juventus. I know Villa Park's going to be a lot more ramped up than it has been for Crystal Palace, for example. And I think these players really relish this type of opposition. Every time a big team comes to Villa, in Villa Park under the lights, Villa really tend to step up their levels. And I think this will be a different test to Bologna. Bologna are high pressing, very direct, where, if you look at Juventus, they average 60% possession in Serie A, second to only Inter, most progressive carries. But at the same time, they've only taken the 12th highest amount of shots. So it shows they have a lot of possession, but they don't necessarily have the cutting instinct. So I think for Villa, if they can really just rattle the cages of Juventus, really, expose them on transition and really get the crowd up, I think it's going to be, all the hallmarks of a real, quintessential Unai Emery performance.
Yeah, we talked about the defence there. Let's talk about the midfield. What are you expecting from the midfield for this one? Did Emery drop any hints? Did he kind of say whether Kamara would be ready to start? Because I think we're really, really missing him now. We're at the point where we're really missing, particularly if Onana's not available either. 2023, Villa were second in the calendar year. 2024, I think Villa are 7th or 8th at the moment. Kamara's been gone since February. That tells me he was a high contributor to that 2023 form.
Yeah, I agree. And you also saw the example of Douglas Luiz, really. His form went off a cliff, didn't it, when Kamara wasn't available. It all depends on how fit Kamara is. If he's really fit, if they're confident in him lasting the whole game, I think he should start. But at the same time, I was thinking about this earlier today. If Kamara is able to play, and you can play Barkley next to him, and then potentially you can get Yuri Tillemans back into that number 10 spot, which we've spoken about before. So I think they've got really good options. It'll be a big ask for Kamara to come in, especially after not his long-term injury, but also his recent one to start. But like you say, Dan, I think he's so important to Villa, and he's an excellent player, and he's the midfield anchor, isn't he? He's like Villa's equivalent of Rodri at Man City.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Tillemans might sit this one out just because he hasn't had much rest. He's looked a little bit leggy in recent weeks. Of course, didn't play for Belgium, took the rest option in the international break like so many. Maybe it's one he doesn't play. I guess In terms of load, it feels like him and Rodgers have had the most load and the least rest through the season so far.
Yeah, you would say, and I'd agree with you. I just think that maybe that international break came at a good time. Tillemans wasn't injured. There's an ongoing issue with him that there needs to be rest. It's not going to be solved overnight, so he has to manage himself. But he did have those 2 weeks off, and I know he looks a little bit leggy against Crystal Palace, but maybe if you play him up in the number 10 position, it might energise him. He'll have less ground to cover. Won't have to sprint as much, on transition as well. So I think that's an important thing, but also, you really would love John McGinn to get back in form, because if he can get back in form, he can play anywhere and he can fill in anywhere. So I think he obviously had a good few weeks for Scotland, and I think this type of game would really, really rev him up.
He'll be in the 11. I've no doubt John McGinn will be in the 11 somewhere for this one, whether it be on that left-hand side or whether it be number 10. Of course, he covered both positions at various points during the last game on Saturday against Crystal Palace. I just wanted to ask you about Leon Bailey. We did a segment on him, Greg and myself, on Monday for the podcast show, so go back and check that out if you haven't watched that already for those watching and listening. I actually came to the conclusion after the game that, it's not fair to single people out at the moment because nobody really is playing consistently except for maybe the goalkeeper and maybe Luca Dean. If you look at Villa's good moments in that game against Crystal Palace, and I'm not saying Bailey was out of this world or he's back to last season, I'm not saying that at all, but he played that raking pass for Ollie Watkins in the first half where Dean Henderson made a brilliant save. He won a penalty. He hit the bar with a rasping drive just when we got back to 1-1. In the second half, I felt like he looked more like the Leon Bailey of last season in terms of taking people on and carrying a threat when he had cash behind him. Did you see it like that? You obviously at the game like me. Did you have a similar vibe? I didn't feel it at the time, but when I thought more about the game when I got home and since, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, do you know what I think with Leon Bailey as well? The reason why we're picking out his form as well is because he is in a position where you need to take risks, and so when he doesn't, or these risks don't come off, he's exposed even more. He can't play it safe, otherwise he basically does nothing. And I think he had a really quite poor start to the game. Got tackled in that 2v2. But just before he came off, actually, I thought he was really coming into it. He was taking more risks. He looked a lot better in the ball. He was getting the ball in that perfect position he was getting in last year, just on the edge of the 18-yard box, coming inside on his left foot. I think this, subbing to come from Leon Bailey really soon. I just hope and pray he doesn't pick up any more injuries. He needs to get into his rhythm now. I think the fact that Jamaica issue is cleared up will be big, because I know that psychologically affected him. His confidence as well as taking a hit. And I think there's a feeling from him, but also Villa, that going back to basics and really going back to what he was great at last year. Pick your strengths. What were you great at? Identify them and go back to them. And I think, the last 20 minutes against Crystal Palace before he came off, actually, I thought he was really good, and hopefully he can carry that on tomorrow.
I could probably do with 90 minutes. 90 minutes might help him rather than it being a bit stop-start and coming off on 70 or coming on. I think maybe 90 minutes under his belt might actually help him however he's playing, because we've undoubtedly got to play him back into form, because there's no one else who can do what he does when he's on song. So we need Bailey back to his Bailey of last season as soon as possible.
But also, if you do play Kamara, I actually think that's going to have a really good impact on Bailey, because Kamara can drop into that third centre-back role in that right back space. You can allow Cash then to push on if he plays, overlapping, and then Bailey can have that 2v1 on the outside and really isolate him. I think Juventus will commit players forward as well. I think that they'll arrive with a lot of players into the box as well. So there will be opportunities to break, like Palace gave Villa. And if they can have Cash, an actual right back, overlapping outside, even if Cash doesn't get the ball, it will create space for Bailey. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him.
I mean, we know that last season it was the change of sock length that got the form going. New haircut, I noticed in the pictures. This could be huge, Jacob.
Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I just thought, right, put him in my fantasy Premier League team now.
Wow, that's a big statement. That's a big move at this stage. He might get injured tomorrow.
For the weekend. Do you know what? I actually do my FPL quite quickly. As soon as the game of weeks finish, I think, right, I'm going to do it now, forget about it. And then, obviously, it comes back to bite me sometimes, but yeah, that's how I do it. I'm not one of those that just...
The rookie move, I would say.
I'm not one of those that frets about it. I haven't got time. I just do it straight away and then worry about it later.
Okay, we've gone through the rest of the so we may as well go through the central striker position as well here. Watkins?
Yeah, Watkins.
100%. No doubt in your mind.
No, I think Duran's, he made a great impact to start the season, but Villa do the structure of the team does flag, and I think Emery struggles to get Duran to do what he wants to do while Duran's on the pitch. And I think if you do play Duran, you will invite more chaos. And I don't think tomorrow's a type of game for chaos.
But if he comes on, he could make it 3 home Champions League goals in a row, couldn't
he? He could.
I really struggle to get that out of my mouth, and I don't know why I'm meant to try to work with that.
He could, but I just think Watkins, especially after his goal against Palace and in a few more efforts, looked a little bit more like himself. Just keep playing Watkins for me.
Okay, I agree with you. Watkins would always be in my team. I think more times than not. Anyway, let's talk about the opposition then. Juventus, of course, they'll bring numbers down to Villa Park tomorrow night. I was actually a Juventus fan in the comments of the last podcast. I noticed him in Max's Villa on Tour video as well. I should go and check out Max's last Villa on Tour video. Actually, I found it very interesting. His trip to corporate for the game. See whether it's a rip off or not. I'll let people draw their own conclusions, and of course, Max drew his own conclusion as well. Juventus, I think, have won 7 games and drawn 6 in Serie A this season, but they're actually unbeaten. So it's a bit of a weird one. Obviously, they're in a period of transition, as you mentioned earlier. New manager Thiago Motta, who did absolute wonders at Bologna, was a good footballer as well. Thiago Motta, very, very good midfield player from what I remember of him. They're in a rebuilding process. They will be a threat, but it's probably important to say that, this isn't the Juventus of the days when it's like Buffon in goal, Chiellini, Bonucci. It's not those days. I couldn't think of a single attacking player that played in that team then. I only think of the defenders.
Yeah, it's remarkable, really. If you look back at even 2020, and the amount of overhaul they've had and the churn of players is remarkable. All the old guard have gone. They've got new, freshness, dynamism. I think they want to become a little bit less straitjacket in terms of, they sacked Allegri last year because he was too defensive, too pragmatic, and they've brought in Motta, who will control games a lot more. That style of play is more in vogue as well. And I think, like you say, it's been a transitional team and a young team. They've been very consistent. I know they've drawn a lot of games and they've been fairly dull by some accounts, apart from one game where they it was 8 goals in it or something. I actually think they've done quite well. And on Thiago Motta as well, if he was playing now, how much money would he be worth? Because he was
so good.
But I don't think he was appreciated enough, because now in that number 6 role, you see with Rodri and those type of players,
sizable guy, wasn't he?
Those metronomic midfielders who are big, physical, they'd be worth loads now. So it's a bit of a shame. And I do realize actually he's 42 now, so he's getting on a little bit. But he did look very well today, even though Juventus's flight was delayed because they were stuck in border control at Birmingham. So maybe that's the start of the mind games, Dan.
I mean, Birmingham Airport is a minefield. If you've gone there recently, no wonder there was problems. Thiago Motta was left-footed as well, wasn't he? If my memory serves me correctly. Very, very good player. I mean, obviously, I said earlier about being half Italian. There's some players who've played for Italy over the last kind of 10, 15 years who I absolutely adore. Verratti as well. Not that he ever played for Juventus, so that's completely irrelevant.
I was going to say.
But what we will say is we've got a Juventus expert with us today, because Jacob, when he came on before we went live, was celebrating to me that he'd done some extensive Juventus research. So you may as well tell us what you know, Jacob.
Yeah, so I've watched a little bit of them this season, and I think they're quite interesting, obviously with the overhauling squad, but the way they play as well. And they've got 8 injuries, and there's quite a lot of the team, and a lot of Motta's press conference today and to Cambiasso was about how they're going to deal with the injuries. Vlahovic obviously is the main one, but they've got McKennie, Artur, Douglas Luiz obviously, and Malik. So that means they have got a striker. So how they play is going to be really interesting. I've seen some articles, really good ones, about they're playing like a 2-2-6 system. When I think that's more of an attention-grabbing headline. They do play. I think it's more of a 4-2-2-2, where so they have 2 double pivot and 2 10s, and then split strikers or deep strikers. And I think that their role is to really overload the midfield and control play through methodical building up through the phases. But I think they're a really good organised team. I think Motta's done incredibly well in his young managerial career as well. But like I say, they haven't had that many shots on target that have warranted how dominant they are in possession. So, final third entries are not exactly, plentiful. So it's going to be a game where Villa will have to be patient. I actually do think if they can make it transitional, in terms of if they can get as many transition opportunities as possible and go back to how they were last year, I think that will be the way to go for Villa.
Yeah, the kind of metrics tell me that they're going to be tough to break down in terms of that they will look after the ball. They'll be resolute out of possession and make it difficult for Villa to play through. I mean, what you've just described will be exactly what Juventus will be saying. Don't let them do that. Bearing in mind they've drawn so many games as well, that kind of tells me that they're never out of games. They're always in the game. So this is going to be a really, really tight one, I feel.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for Villa Park to stay with the team, because there might be some periods where Villa don't touch the ball often, or they're not going. They don't control play, and a lot of it is them sat in a mid block and letting the Juventus centre backs have it. That's absolutely fine, but I think they need Villa Park and the crowd really need to be patient and really keep the atmosphere going. And then you will look at the likes of Rodgers, potentially McGinn, Watkins, Leon Bailey, those real big ball carriers, drivers who are just fantastic at just eating up ground at their best. If they can get into those opportunities, then yeah, it'd be fantastic. I think a goal, I wouldn't be surprised if a goal is similar to Duran's against Bayern in terms of Villa just, the opposition switch off and Villa just hit them straight away with a few quick passes and they score. So I think it's going to be a really good game, and I'm glad that it's at Villa Park. I think they've got such a great opportunity, and like I say, Emery and Motta say Juventus are favourites, but I tend to disagree.
Motta say that as well.
He said that we're going there to win. He did obviously say it in that description, but he said we'll go there to win, and he didn't believe Emery wanted a draw. But I do think Villa are a better team, and I would love to see how this Juventus team would match up in the Premier League. I don't know how highly they'll finish.
It's an interesting one. Then let's finish with a hot take / freezing cold take. I'm going to keep it relatively simple. Ollie Watkins to score his first Champions League goal is as simple as I'm prepared to keep it for this one. Unlucky with my shout in the preview for Palace saying Tielemans was going to score. Obviously, he missed a penalty, and I've predicted a penalty every bloody week. In the week I don't predict a penalty, we get a penalty. What are you going to go for, Jacob?
My hot take is that Villa won't concede a goal from a corner, their own corner this time.
I mean, that would be. I wouldn't believe my eyes if that happened, Jack. I don't think I've actually spoken to you directly since the game. Probably one of the biggest head losses I've ever had at Villa Park when that second Palace goal went in. I was on my feet, stamping my feet, head in hands. I was fuming, absolutely fuming.
Do you know what? I was exactly the same, because I had a plan of what I was going to write about, and then as soon as that goal went in, I messaged my editor. I was like, "What? We have to write this, because this can't go on." And then I asked Emery afterwards, and he said, "Basically, in the last 2 weeks, we decided to keep 3 players outside the box instead of 2. So the first corner that Villa get tomorrow, I'm going to see how many players are on the outside.
For sure.
If they're doing the same, please keep someone. Honestly, I don't know what you think, Dan. Just keep someone on the halfway line. I know you're a little bit deeper, but at least you have someone behind the ball." It's bizarre, isn't it?
I mean, in fairness to them, they will have had this set up for a long, long time now, and it's not been a problem. It's suddenly just become a problem in the last 2 games. Obviously, we're now talking about it, but we're also for 12 months that's been happening, and we haven't said anything. So it's unfortunate for them, I guess. But I suffered huge loss. I was like, I literally took me. It was like being 7 again at Villa Park. I had fully gone. I was very, very upset. I didn't even know what to tweet at halftime. It's a miracle if you get a signal to do a tweet. Dan, I literally couldn't think of anything to say.
Dan, you should imagine what it's like for me watching Southampton every week and the type of goals they concede. I could become numb to that, but I can understand the frustration.
Yeah, you've had it bad, haven't you, in the weekend? The way Villa conceded goals and the way Southampton conceded goals, not pleasant to be at Tanswell at this point, I would suggest.
Certainly not. Every team that I've been covering has had a win for a good while.
No, I mean, I've forgotten what it's like to win. Was it Bologna last time we won? Or was it Fulham? Was Bologna?
Bologna, yeah.
That feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? It's probably a month. It's got to be a month ago. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Bologna,
well.
Geez.
Yes, it needs to get back. But I honestly do think Villa will win tomorrow. I don't know if it's me being optimistic, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 3-1 type of game. Actually, I think Villa will go back to their best, and I think this is a type of game that they really need at this time. It comes at a great time for them.
Yeah, famous last words from Jacob Tanswell, the Athletics Aston Villa correspondent. Right then, let's go. Thanks to those that have joined us live, and thank you to everyone that will go on to listen and watch as well. If you're watching on YouTube, if you could subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on and leave us a comment, that would be absolutely sensational. And if you're listening via audio, leave us a review and give us 5 stars, and that really, really helps us as well, because we will appear in places we perhaps wouldn't have appeared before. And listen to the adverts all the way through as well, because I believe that's something that helps with revenue do, but I'm absolutely no expert at this stuff, so don't quote me on that. Thank you to Luke Roper for sponsoring. Remember, use the code TVV20 to get 20% off. Jacob, could you maybe we jump on Thursday of the Juventus game? Is that something that's possible? Are you a busy boy? I don't know what your schedule is.
I'm busy on that day, but I'm always find time for you, Dan. So we could do a even one.
We'll have a discussion. I'm sure people would love to hear from you. We'll try and sort something out ahead of Thursday. But either way, there will be a video and a podcast on Thursday looking back at what hopefully is 3 Champions League points for Villa. If you go into the game tomorrow night, then we will both see you there because, of course, we will both be at Villa Park tomorrow evening. If you're not there, enjoy watching it on the TV and get behind the boys from your home. Have an excellent what's left of the night. Not long left now. I'm going to go to bed, I think, myself. But yeah, only one thing left to say. A big, massive, huge up the Villa.